Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Good afternoon to everybody. It's your brother Asif Hussain here, aka Abu Musa. Just wanted to share a few thoughts with you whilst I'm driving home. I'm not doing anything illegal. I've got my phone attached in my car, so I'm driving and talking. I'll be looking at the screen, looking ahead of me. So yeah, inshallah, I just wanted to share a few thoughts today. I attended a session this morning, training session on equality and diversity. It was a very interesting session that we had. A lot of discussion there, a lot of themes raised about equality and the recognition of diversity. And obviously those of you that have done the training before, you know about the 9 characteristics. I'm not going to go into those. I'm not going to lecture anyone about what equality and diversity is according to, you know, this society is kind of like understanding of it. Anyway, there was an interesting kind of section in there where we all had a particular statement. We were all in groups in a particular statement. Everybody had a different statement. One that we had was about how we're living in times where everything has to be politically correct, and whatever you say, which was true. And there was a discussion around that. But the one I wanted to pick up on was the one specific statement which one group had, because at the end of each kind of discussion group, we had to kind of present to the other groups what our statement was and what our opinions were and what we thought about this issue. So this particular group had the question around the burqa, and do they think that the burqa should be something that is allowed in British society? Now, the majority of the group was in favour of it, so that, you know, it's the individual's right to wear the burqa. But obviously discussions started to raise from some of the members in the session felt that, you know, why should one community group be allowed to cover their face up when you can't see them? They emphasised on the issue of communication and seeing facial expressions, and how you can't see somebody's face when you talk to them, etc., etc. So some of these statements were raised, some of the challenges were raised, some of the statements were raised of why, you know, in one breath should somebody wearing a biker's helmet come into a place, has to take it off. You know, somebody else a young person wearing a balaclava has to take it off. But why should an individual who wears a burqa, you know, walk into a place and not have to remove it? So me being in that audience, sat there, I couldn't stay quiet. I could not say anything. And interestingly enough, the lady at the front who was facilitating it all, she kind of peered over towards my direction, ironically enough. Don't tell me why she did that, I don't know. You know, maybe it was just an intuition or whatever like that. And she looks and says, does anybody have any comments on this? Obviously, I raised a few points. And I said, look, you know, point number one, you know, yeah, you can use a reference of the biker with the biker helmet and the balaclava, but let's get one thing clear: these you know, objects that they're wearing and have on is purely for specific purposes. One is for the safety of, you know, one riding a motorbike. The other one is as a fashion statement. Whereas the burqa is according to one's beliefs, something that some people will feel that it's an obligation upon them to wear. So in that context, it's very different. The discussion is very different, and the perspective is very different. So let's get that point clear, first of all. And the second point I raised about communication, I said, look, you know, you raised the issue of communication, and yet, you know, we communicate on many different platforms. You know, you communicate on social media, you communicate via email, you communicate via, you know, telephones, mobiles. You know, and the lady was like trying to emphasize on the fact that, well, you can't see somebody. You know, you want to see someone's expressions. I said, you can read a lot from people's use of language over the phone, the tonality, whether you feel this person is kind of like somebody you'd like to talk with, whether they're friendly, whether they're not friendly. You can gather a lot without looking at their face, looking at their facial expressions. You don't have to look at the facial expressions to ascertain the kind of personality that you're dealing with. And the same with something in a written format. The communication there by people's use of the English language it can be very expressive. You can express a great deal through written language. Some people have the art to do that, some people don't. So you can't really kind of summarize this whole subject around these things, and the arguments that were thrown out were pretty lame. And it was something that I just threw up, and I think one after the other I was raising a few issues here and there. And I think the other statement, which was key for me, that I made was about being politically correct, that we do live in times where the so-called term of freedom of speech is used. And actually that statement, let me clarify that statement was something to do with how people have become so politically correct that nobody's allowed to say anything out of context, or just insult, or to sort of like say something that if they dislike something, they should openly say that. And I said, look, a couple of things here that if you feel that you have to insult something. So I use the example of my belief. I said, look, if our prophet, peace be upon him, is being insulted, that is something we won't accept, because that's something important to us, that is intricate part of our belief. And if you feel as a society that you feel as a society that this is healthy, or this is this is conducive for creating good community kind of like relations, then you need to really question the premise of where you're coming from. Why are you embarking on such a dialogue? Why are you taking this dialogue in this direction that you want to insult something? Does not show the kind of shortcomings that you have, maybe in terms of your lack of tolerance, maybe in lack of your ability to express yourself. Okay, and I openly said to her, there's the things that I don't agree with what's being discussed here, but that doesn't mean that I show this in an aggressive manner or in an aggressive tone. I don't need to. I can disagree to something, dislike something, but not make it evident to you. And we all have those, but it's how you. I guess it's what triggers that hatred. Is it something based upon your experiences? Is it based upon what media is kind of like informing you about? So it's interesting that these conversations in these sessions are running. One of the funny things that I found in this session was that how this whole equality and diversity idea is constantly fluid, constantly changing. And one of the things that the facilitator mentioned was that, look, when this course is introduced, throughout its lifetime, it constantly changes. Things happen in society, and opinions and views are changed. Which was interesting, because we know things are constantly changing, and the benchmark of what is acceptable today may not be acceptable tomorrow, and what is something that is not even considered today, maybe people have a different complete perspective to it tomorrow. So I didn't raise the discussion, but to me what came to my mind was, what are the benchmarks for you as a society? Where do you draw the line? How do you know what is right and what is wrong? Because what was wrong 10 years ago, 20 years ago is now right, is okay, is acceptable, should be embraced. Who's to say that 10, 15 years, 20 years down the line, something that is disliked now or hated now or seen as not normal becomes normal. So it's kind of concerning, to be honest with you, more than anything, that the kind of criteria that we use in society to judge what's right and wrong, we can use the old cliche that homosexuality 50 years ago was deemed kind of, unacceptable, looked down upon, people didn't speak about it, people disliked it, but now it's celebrated. And this is the same society that hated this idea. So as Muslims, it's important that we understand that we don't take this concept of equality and diversity from the Western liberal kind of like viewpoint. That Islam, we view it from halal and haram, and that's it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already clearly defined our viewpoint to things, and we don't have a fluid viewpoint that changes because society now wants to act in a certain way or feels a certain way towards an idea. This is something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already spoke on the matter. and we have to kind of like, ensure that as a society, as a Muslim community, we are very clear on this. And the problem with these kind of programs and ideas is that it's trying to challenge our core values and belief. And I didn't raise the discussion because I thought, you know what, I want to raise a few issues, but I don't need to go into too much detail about what my inner thinking is about these things, because you've got a consensus that's being pushed. So I don't need to kind of just go with the flow, but I have my views, I have my opinions. If somebody wants to delve into those and discuss them with me, I'm happy to discuss them with them. But there's a time and a place for everything to be opened up and disclosed. And in a session that lasts less than 2 hours, and you have multiple subjects to cover, you can't do justice to something like this. And you have a mixed group of people. But I got a few key points out there. One of them for me was that, look, it's funny how society can impose something upon you, and you have to conform to that regardless of what your personal views are. And if you disagree with that, then you're shunned in society. You're kind of you're discriminated in society. So if you disagree with homosexuality and you come out with it, how are people going to respond to you? They're gonna look, think that you're wrong and attack you, and just because they believe this is right, their response becomes very aggressive towards you. They don't respect, even though the funny thing was that equality and diversity is about respecting everybody's beliefs and views. But do they really respect everyone's beliefs and views? If I openly declare that, I don't agree with homosexuality, I think it's wrong, it's forbidden from Islam, how will you look at me as a Muslim? You'll see me backwards. You think that Islam is bad, it's not right, because this is the view that you hold. So can you really honestly believe in such a concept of equality and diversity when our belief system is completely different to your belief system? What you want us to accept, we cannot accept. How can we turn around and agree with gender reassignment, with the whole LGBTQ narrative? These are things they're not palatable with our deen, and we cannot conform to these ideas. And alhamdulillah, there were maybe a couple of Muslims in the audience with me. None of them spoke, none of them raised the issue, but alhamdulillah, I spoke and I said what I needed to say there without being overtly controversial, but I made some valid points, and I think I probably sent a very clear message to these people. So, moral of the story, brothers and sisters, why am I blagging on for too long? Nearly 30 minutes of talking. Yeah, is that, look, when you're in public places, it's important that you are well versed on our arguments, on our position, on our standpoint, and we should express it in a manner that shows that we're not jahil, we're not backwards. Islam is an intellectual man's belief. It's not somebody who's just kind of like found Islam by chance, but rather it's the thinking man's belief, that we should question the premise of these people's thinkings, where they're coming from. And that was the key point of my points that I raised, to highlight the flaws and the contradictions. And this is how we need to present ourselves, rather than remaining silent and being reserved about our views and beliefs. We need to expose their beliefs. We need to question their premises. That's it, brothers and sisters. I hope that this has been a useful kind of 10 minutes of your life. If not, I'm sorry, I do apologize. But if so, inshallah, watch out for my next vlog. Assalamu alaikum.